So, hello, how are we all doing? Hope you're all having a lovely week, not being worked too hard. I know lockdown is pretty much over now, so I will be back to work soon as well. Soon, not yet though. But, as you may have noticed, sky is very grey, very drab. I'm in full waterproofs, it has been raining. So what would I be photographing? That's what I'd be asking right now. And the answer to that is this. But yeah, so here we are. This is what we have come to photograph tonight. I've never photographed here before. I would have liked maybe a little bit more water coming down the face. But I still think the conditions are pretty good. There's one thing that I would have liked, and that is not so much of a clearing. And here's why. Check this out. Like this, you see how it's so nicely lit. It's dark, it's not so contrasty, and it's not so backlit. And the trees are just absolutely beautiful. If the waterfalls could be underneath this, that would make it look much, much better. But let's go back to the other one. But you see, can you see what I mean? This open air, this lightness, it doesn't look as good as what it could do with this waterfall. That canopy coming over the top, that nice dark light, that moody, dramatic, you know, I like that. I like that. For composition, I have no idea. But what I would like to get today is 3 separate shots of this waterfall. The waterfall always being the focal point, but each one having a different feeling. So I'll definitely capture the wide angle classic shot of a waterfall, but then I want to start to play around a little bit. I want to try and get a little bit more creative with the scene at hand. So yeah, that is the plan. Creative shots of a waterfall. Stick around, let's see how it goes. So I think I found option number 1, which this lens could be a little bit wider for, but I'm still pretty happy with the concept. How the concept turns out, different matter. So I think what I'm going to start to do now is I'm going to get my tripod on and see if my smallest aperture, lowest ISO, and my polarizer gives me a long enough exposure to be able to capture the effect that I'd like. And it should. But you don't know yet. So I'm gonna quickly grab my stuff and then I'll meet you over there. Okay, so I think I've got my composition all worked out now. And I'm just going to jump into video mode, and I've gone for a really simple one. And just down in the foreground down here, I've got loads of bubbles, and that polarizer, as you can see there, is doing wonders to get rid of that sheen. But if you look, as I take that sheen off, I'm getting a really nice light pattern coming across and mirror imaging that beautiful shape of that waterfall. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a long exposure of them bubbles moving, and then I'll do a long exposure of them bubbles moving with that light coming towards me, and then blend them together and see if I can make the leading line of the light source, but then also the bubbles pop as well. It might work out. For the composition of the waterfall, I've got this lovely branch coming down here, sort of framing it, because the waterfall itself is actually wider going around that way, and I don't want that to be involved so much. By having that branch there, it's sort of cutting off that other waterfall. So I've got the main face here, the bubbles, the leading line coming towards me. It's looking pretty strong. For my focus, I'm just going to focus on that waterfall and then let everything else drop out. I'm going to shoot my long exposure for the bubbles on f16 L10, so 4 seconds for that, and I'm just going to stay perfectly still, because any movement I make here is affecting that. Okay, so I've captured that 4 second now with the polarizer turned on, and them bubbles look absolutely incredible. What I might try and do though is see if I can raise that a little bit more. So let's go from, gonna go from f16 to f22, where with a correct exposure, that's giving me 10 seconds, okay? So I'm gonna try that 10-second exposure and see if that really brings out them bubbles more. I'll see you when that's done. So there, this is the shot that I captured with them really long bubbles. And I like that. I think that looks much better. So f22, not my favorite f-stop, but when I wanna have a longer exposure without starting to add loads of filters on the front, that is my best technique. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn that polarizer off, and I'm gonna get a correct exposure, fire that off. And now I've got that leading line, this leading line just up here. I've got the bubbles and I've got that leading line. And then I'm gonna see if I can play and blend them together. But I think that shot is pretty darn good. I quite like it. I'm gonna do one more exposure where I really underexpose the light coming through them tree branches. F11, 1/4 per second, ISO 64. And the reason why is because the highlights behind waterfalls can sometimes get blown out massively. And if I was ever to print this, I wouldn't want them blown out. I'd want a little bit of detail in there. But I think for composition number 1, winner. Absolute winner. Now I'm gonna go see if I can find composition number 2. And as I've said before, my favorite way to find new compositions is by taking my camera off and having a little walk around. So I've just had another idea, and I know you saw in that little clip of my idea. So I'm gonna change the feel of this shot by shooting through trees, and I wanna leave the trees out of focus for now. I may do another shot where I composite the leaves and the waterfall so everything's in focus. But for now, I'm gonna start off by just shooting the waterfall through them trees. And what I kind of want to do is make it more like a studio shot instead of handheld, quick snap. I want to try and do it more professional by adding that tripod, which is going to be a little bit of a pain because then I need to find the right place to put the tripod, find the right branches, and you know, a bit more of a faff. But just going to go get my tripod. So I think I've got my composition now, and to the point where I'm actually filming on this camera. So I've got this lovely branch just up here, this lovely branch up here, this little branch down here adding some interest. I really like that. And I like the way it's gradual into focus down here. I left the waterfall quite heavy on the left-hand side, coming round to the right, because I've got this big pool here. I thought it would be quite nice to have this dominant here and dominant there, so it gives you a full picture of that waterfall and a little circle for your eyes to follow around. And I think that looks quite nice, and I'm really happy with how I've managed to clear the branches without damaging the tree. I've just sort of folded them underneath bigger branches, so no bushes were harmed in the making of this image, I promise. So I'm going to leave the polarizer quite dark on the water, but then I'm going to turn that polarizer off for the leaves, and then I'll blend them together because I like the reflection you get off the leaves. It gives a nice little contrast, but having the reflection on the rocks as well, it means that the waterfall doesn't stand out as much. So dark waterfall, rocks and water, vibrant contrasty leaves. Fingers crossed. So it's just time to start capturing these images, really. What I want to try though, is I want to try it where I've got a really long exposure for that waterfall. So I'm just gonna slow it all the way down to L10, close my aperture to F 16. So I'm going to start off with a 4-second exposure and see how milky smooth that water can really get. And it's looking pretty dreamy, if I'm honest. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my polarizer and start getting them reflections. And luckily today there is very little wind, so that 2-second timer should be okay. Nothing should be too soft. So now I've got the waterfall here, dreamy, beautiful waterfall. And then I've got my leaves with my contrast and that sheen on. When I blend them together, you'll have to wait until the end to see that, but when I blend them together, they should look really quite nice. And I think this shot that I've captured here has a completely different feel to that first shot. Now, if I can get number 3 to have a completely different feel, I'm onto a winner. But I'm gonna get the old camera off the tripod and have a little look around. So as you can probably see, my tripod is super low to the ground. And again, that's because I'm trying to get a different feeling out of the same focal point. And I think I have. Like, I didn't expect it to happen, but I have. And it's all thank you to these sycamore leaves. Now, if you look at the back of this sycamore leaf that I've just picked up, it held the water really well. I'll bring it a little bit closer. Now, the ones where it's been raining on look a little bit more like this. You see that? Looks really cool. Now, I have got one of them just down here. You see that? And with my polarizer, I'm taking the polarization of these rocks just in the foreground. It helps that stand out so much more. And then I've got the waterfall in the background, still an element of the image, but I've left that really out of focus. And I've made it all about that leaf in the immediate foreground. I may focus stack just in case. I prefer that as a composition. But at the moment, from what I can see, this is the shot. I've got this little stalk just here, just in that bottom right hand corner, coming across, centralized leaf, centralized waterfalls out of focus. But I have got it on f11, so it's not completely out of focus to the point of becoming bokeh. It's still enough detail that it's there, but I think it has a different feeling. So my settings to capture this, I've got it on f11, ISO L10, my slowest, and a 2-second timer. 2-second timer, absolutely fine. That leaf's not going nowhere, and neither is this tripod. But there, so this is my shot of that leaf, and I might leave it at that as my final image. You'll have to wait until the end to see it. But for now, I am going to focus stack. So I've got that first shot nice and tight. Then I'm going to check where it's out of focus. I'm going to focus in on that. Capture that image. Same settings as before. Then I'm going to zoom in. Find the point where it's out of focus. Tell you what, let's focus on the waterfall. And yeah, that pretty much covers the rest of it. So I've got focused on that leaf, focused on the midground, focused on the waterfall, and then that's given me a nice sharp all the way through. When you edit these in Photoshop, always make sure to align your photos. The computer, Photoshop will be very clever, blend everything, put it together, and make sure it's nice and focused. But again, I might have it so that waterfall is out of focus, and it's all about that leaf. The waterfall's still in there, but it's capturing a different feeling. And that was what tonight was all about, really. Going to one location and capturing different feelings from that one location. And with that in mind, I think it's been a success. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have. But from me this week, that is going to be all. I hope you're not having to work too hard and that you're still getting out with your cameras. But yeah, But other than that, I'll see you next week. Peace out.
If you talk all the time, you'll never hear what anybody else has to say. And therefore all you'll have to talk about is your own conversation. The same is true for people who think all the time. That means when I use the word think,